thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Let's Talk Aging. My name is Molly Wisniewski of The Upside to Aging, and I'm so excited to be with Meg Laporte today to talk about her project, Age in America. So Meg, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what services you provide in the aging services?
Sure. So I'm a freelance writer and communications specialist, and I've been in the field, working in the field for about 18 years, I guess. And for a number of years, I was the managing editor of a trade magazine that was part of the American Healthcare Association and the National Center for Assisted Living. It was called Provider, and it went to all nursing homes and nearly every assisted living community in the country. Wow. So in that, I learned a lot about aging services when I did that for about 9 years. Before that, I worked with some other associations that were in the field, that were related to the field. And now, for the past 2.5 years, I've been doing freelance work. And one of my most recent jobs is here where my office is at Lifespan Network, which is a Maryland-based nonprofit organization that represents senior services providers in Maryland and DC.
That's great. Yeah. So you told us a little bit about how you got into the field. Can you tell us a bit about what led you into starting your project, Age in America?
Sure. Yeah. So at some point during my tenure with the magazine, I decided that I wanted to get a master's degree in aging services. And so I went to the Erickson School at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is how I ended up meeting you, Molly.
Yeah.
And, I enjoyed that a great deal. And I think I was inspired by going through the program to do something that would help reframe people's view of aging. And so I think what happened was what happened was I was writing for Changing Aging, the blog Changing Aging at the time, and for Dr. Bill Thomas. And when I started writing for them, he said to me, Meg, if you can think of some way to bridge the blog to his tours. So he does the tours around the country that, I don't know if some people are familiar with them. And what he does is he's sort of a troupe. He has a group of people who do this, what he calls nonfiction theater. And he's done this now for about 3 years, I think. He's going on his 4th year. And so at the time, I thought, okay, yeah, I'll try to think of something. And then one day I was looking at a blog called Humans in New York. And it is an incredibly popular series, and it runs on Facebook as well as Instagram. And I think it has like 20 million viewers, more than that probably. It's been around for a few years. And I just love Humans of New York. And you've seen Humans of New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I loved it because you look at somebody's picture and you think one thing about them, and then you read what they had to say to the person taking the picture, to the photographer, and you get this other perspective. And it's fascinating because you might think one thing and then see what they have to say and realize something really interesting about it, or they may just have something really sort of not necessarily exciting, but just it makes somebody real, and it gives you a new perspective on someone. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if this would make sense to do for older adults, as a way to get people, like I said, to reframe their perspective of aging and what it's like to be old. And so I took it to them. They weren't able to do it, and then I just decided to do it on my own. And I had the support of the school, of the Erickson School. And I started it in April. And I just started by asking people in the Maryland, Baltimore area if I could come to their community. I've really done it mostly in life plan communities,
right? Yeah.
CCRCs, as they're also known. And I've now interviewed, I don't know how many people, probably around 50, I think. Wow. Maybe a little more than that. And I still have anyway, so I came up with a series of questions. So I ask everyone the same set of questions. And the reason why is because I do want to do research on it at some point, qualitative research on the response to those questions. And I did a lot of research on how Brandon was the person's name who started Humans of New York, and how he did it and what he did and what kind of questions he did. And I used a couple of his questions and I added a couple in. So I've been going to communities. I meet with older adults. I ask them these series of questions. I also have them sign a release form because, of course, I'm going to post everything on, on the blog. I have a blog that's anchored, the project's anchored at a blog called ageinaamerica.blog. And then it's on Facebook, Age in America also, and on Instagram, Age in America, and the same name as well on Twitter. So like I said, I have them sign a release form, and then I ask them a series of questions. I record what they are saying, and then I take their photo, or I take a bunch of photos of them, and I use the photos, of course. And I pick a nice one, and I edit the photos, and I post them on the blog and on the other social media sites. And I pull from, I don't, it would be too much to put in every single thing they say, but I pull from that what I think are sort of interesting or more compelling stories that they tell me, and put it up on and post it. And I try to stay as close to exactly what they said as possible. That's really important, I think. And sometimes I'll just edit for clarity or something like that.
No, I love that. Well, as you know, I've been a fan of Age in America for quite some time, since I knew you started the project. It's very rare to find someone going in to particularly a long-term care setting for people that are living in long-term care, that are going in and asking those types of questions, or even acknowledging that they still have a voice, that they still have more to their story, and that they actually want to share their story. So I find your project really inspiring and needed, because you break that barrier, I think, for people that may not know what long-term care is, or has a perception of what long-term care is, and you're really breaking that. So I love that.
Well, and the reason why I put it, that's sort of the reason why I put it on social media, because we all know that the people who are on social media are generally younger, although there are a number of older and middle-aged or older adults who are also on social media. But the idea is to also target younger people who nowadays don't have nearly as much interaction with older adults as people did when in previous generations.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why I put it on social media. And the other is to just help, to utilize the power of storytelling. And I think that social media is very much about storytelling. And so to use, and obviously older adults, everybody has a story to tell. Everyone has an interesting story to tell. Everyone is, and I think that everyone deserves to have their story told if they want to tell it. And many people want to tell it with the project. Some people don't, and that's obviously completely fine. But that is why I put it on social media, hopefully to target younger folks and expose younger people to what it's like to be older, and to let them, to make people realize, hey, it's not so bad. It's, people who are, and almost everyone I've interviewed have said, when I ask them, one of the questions I ask generally, it's not one of my required questions, but I'll end up saying something like, do you wish you were younger, in many cases? And no one, I don't think anyone has ever said, yeah, I want to be younger.
Right.
Or then I'll ask, but one of the questions, the very first question I ask is, what is it like to be your age? What is it like to be 75? What is it like to be 88? And I almost always get a positive response to that. Sometimes people are not so happy at the moment and at being the age they are. They'll say, that physically it's hard to get around. I'm having a hard time recently. But generally, when I ask somebody their age, they're like, hey, you know what? It's actually pretty cool. I can do whatever I want, or I have all of these, I have a perspective on life that is really, that is much better than I had when I was younger.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. You can definitely, I've been following all of your stories, and you can definitely tell that there is a theme, and it's a lot more optimistic than maybe,
Yes.
in our
Someone would
mind.
think. Yeah.
Can you give us an example, maybe one of the stories that really sticks out for you? I know you've had quite a few so far. So.
I have had quite a few stories. A woman who I interviewed more recently, she and her husband had lived in Nevis, the island of Nevis, which is in the West Indies, for like 10 or 20 years, I think. And they opened the first, I think it was the first Four Seasons hotel, one of the first. It was the first one on the island, at least, but it was one of the first. And it was, and they ran the hotel, and she also started her own landscaping business, and he had a real estate business. And it was just really interesting to hear the story of what it was like for them to live on the island. And at one point, even, I think it was a British colony at the time, the Queen of England came to the island, and she met the Queen of England and Prince Philip.
Wow.
And her husband did.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I remember reading that one. I really liked that one because she was, I don't know, you kind of could feel her younger self and the excitement, yet the nerves of moving to a different country, not sure if it was going to take off their career, and they ended up staying there for a while, right?
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about her was that she said that she'd been married 3 times in her life. I think it was 3 times.
Wow.
Maybe 4, but she said all of her 3 husbands were wonderful people.
Oh, yeah.
So the 2 previous, so all of her husbands actually had passed away. I don't think she actually divorced any of the husbands.
Oh, okay.
But I believe they passed away when she was married to them. I'm not positive, but at least one had passed away.
Right.
And she just said they were all wonderful people. She had wonderful husbands.
Yeah.
And she felt very lucky. She said that, and she knew that there are a lot of people in the world who don't get that, who don't have that in their life. And she felt very lucky.
Yeah.
To be married to 3 wonderful men.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. I've actually thought of her story quite a bit because working in long-term care, you do see the longevity and how many lives people can have in one life. And
yeah.
I think your project really shines on that because it's hard to articulate that. It's hard to explain to somebody that because we think of life in one big strand, and we have to do all of these things before we hit a certain age.
Yes.
But then you listen to their stories and you realize, no, there's many lives within one life that we lead, and so many different adventures. And
yes, I think that's really true. And I hadn't even thought about, I don't think I'd thought about it like in that way, but that makes a lot of sense. That's really true.
Yeah.
And I think that it gets to the fact that we have created these social constructs in life about when we should be somewhere in our life, like at what point. When we're 25, we should have a job and we should have a house or a place, working our way up the ladder or something like that in our career. And I think that by 50, we should be successful and be making a lot of money and having, these wonderful, and traveling the world or doing these really great things. But I think today, now that we know people are living much longer, for one, and you said having many different lives or chapters of our lives, I think that's just not gonna, I don't think that placing those sorts of expectations on our lives are really that make a lot of sense anymore. I don't think they make a lot of sense anymore. And I think with the people I've interviewed, like you said, they've had so many different chapters in their lives and so many different things happen that they look back on, they're in hindsight, it's not like as awful as it may have been felt at the time. Right. So, and I think that when you feel awful about something, it may be because of the social construct of where we thought that we should have been at that place in our lives, right? That we should have been married and had 2 children,
right,
or had never been divorced or had one husband and just, or one spouse. Yeah, I think I think that's very interesting. I think it's a good way to have the perspective. And the other thing, one thing I ask people, another question I ask is, what is it that you can teach someone else? And I think, like, when I first started asking that question, I thought the answer was going to be, I can teach someone how to sew, or I can teach someone how to speak Spanish, or I can teach someone how to play the piano. Most people, the majority of the people will say, I think I can teach people patience, or I want to teach people how to be patient. I think patience is, for whatever reason, they turn to patience. And I think that is another incredible lesson to learn from someone's life, someone who has accumulated so many more years than
definitely
you or me. And I think and as I grow older, I see the value in having patience, and I think I'm much more patient than when I was 25 years old, certainly too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I completely agree, and I love that. I think that's it's nice to know that there are that you're shining a light on that narrative too. So we have an example to go to, because what happens a lot of times with somebody moving into a nursing home, and I use the term nursing home broadly, for any long-term care setting, they move in, and that, for at least the rest of society, that's it. We don't see them unless we're actively working in there. And coupled with our perception of what is going on behind those doors, even further distance ourselves from that narrative. So, and that's particularly why I wanted to highlight your project, because I think while it's nice to listen to their stories and to hear the lives that they have led, I do think you're doing something that a lot of people aren't doing, and that's bringing that narrative or opening those doors so that people can peek in. And I think, and I know because of your following, I mean, there's a lot, you're catching a lot of people's interests. And I think it's because people are curious. They're asking those questions. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, there has to be something more. And they're really looking to that, like that part of your life. And that's why I love Aging in America, because it's so unique. I mean, I know you modeled off of Humans of New York, but just in terms of getting the older adults' perspective is just, it's so exciting. And that leads me to my next question, because we talk a lot in the field about the growing needs for professional caregivers. And I have my own theories on bad perceptions of nursing homes, and our constant grappling with what it means to get older has some sort of play in why we're not going into those field. How does your project, and I know I kind of talked about this, but how do you think that your project could encourage others to join the field?
I think there is a couple of ways that could happen. One, like, I said, I think it helps to break down the myths about aging, and therefore help people to see help younger people who are interested in that field, or maybe interested in going into healthcare or social services or something, see that, it's not so scary to be around older people, because that's another myth that we have about older people, or stereotype that older people are crabby and curmudgeonly or something.
Right.
And that's not the case, or that older people nobody can hear, and nobody can, that there's a lot of just terrible stereotypes out there, as we know. I hope that my project can help break those down, so that people can be exposed to the many things that, many aspects of life of being old, of being older, or working in a retirement community or a nursing home or something like that, or social services that serves older adults.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the other thing I forgot to mention is that I've also interviewed some certified nurse assistants for my project, just for that very reason that you mentioned, and that is to expose people who care for older adults in the nursing home setting.
Yeah.
Some were, I think, may work in assisted living as well, but primarily those I interviewed worked in the nursing home setting, and to see how they feel about it. And the folks I interviewed, I don't know, you probably, if you saw those,
yeah, I did.
They love what they do. They're so dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we all know that CNAs also make probably the least of anybody, among the least of anybody who works in a nursing home setting.
Right.
And in my opinion, they are among the most underappreciated group of people who work in aging services. But they are incredibly dedicated and love their jobs and love being with older adults and love being around what, they'll call them their residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that will also help expose other people to see what a rewarding experience it can be to do that type of work.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought that up, because I did follow that series, and I think again, it just couples the mission of Age in America is to really highlight that what's going on there and what's happening and why it needs attention, demands attention, mm-hmm. and that there are good people that are doing this work and hard work, and it's only going to get harder because of the amount of people that are going to be needing these types of care. So
the next series I'm going to run on Age in America, I did when I was recently in Florida. I went to a community there that had a greenhouse home, and I went to the greenhouse home and interviewed a group of what are called sages. So there are the position in the greenhouse home of a sage is someone who is an older adult and who sort of helps guide the other caregivers in the community, as well as the older adult, as well as the residents, and sort of acts as a liaison between them, or just helps out where necessary. It's a volunteer position. Wow. And so the folks I interviewed it was a CCRC. They lived in the community, but they would come on a given set of days to the greenhouse, to the part of the community where the greenhouse home was, and work with what's called the Shabazim there, the universal care. They're the folks who help run the greenhouse home. Work with the Shabazim and the older adults, and just serve as sort of a presence there of knowledge and wisdom and whatever else they might need. And so these are really interesting people too, I think. So you'll see a series of interviews with them.
That's great.
They'll talk a little bit about their own lives and why they became sages and how they feel about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting project. Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm going to be doing is, I think I mentioned earlier that now I'm doing communications for Lifespan Network, this organization here in Maryland, and I'm going to bring Age in America to the providers and the provider members. And so I'm going to be interviewing folks in the communities that are our own, the members of Lifespan Network, and working with them to interview and get the stories of their residents. Yeah. And also at some point too, I would like to do a sort of crowdsourcing aspect of this, where people take the set of questions I have, ask them, and take their own photos and then submit it either on the Facebook page or somehow submit it, and then go from there. So I think that would also be another way to first accumulate more stories and more interesting things, and also let other people experience what it's like to have the incredibly rewarding experience of interviewing older adults and asking these questions, getting to know these, people. So
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, encouraging conversations, to start that conversation between the generations. That's incredible and so important and not done enough. So,
yeah, I think, well, I think so. Yeah. So the other thing, if I could bring up one more thing,
yeah.
The folks at the Erickson School were very interested in my project, so much so that they asked me to teach a class that sort of related to the project. The class, I'm teaching it now,
Uh-huh.
and it's to the Erickson undergraduate students who are in the Aging Services undergraduate program at UMBC.
Right.
And it's about aging in the media and how it's really about creative ways to combat ageism and to dispel stereotypes about aging, and to create my goal is really to sort of help to encourage the students to create a movement against ageism. And we're reading Ashton Applewhite's book, This Chair Rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also looking at what other people are doing other than just Age in America. There are lots of other projects out there, incredible things.
Yeah.
What people are doing to help change people's perspectives about aging. And also we're looking at other movements. So we're looking at in art, for example, in art, there have been many artists who have done their work because they are trying to make social change, or they do their work in an effort to make social change. So we're looking at examples of other movements and how, and using that hopefully to inspire the kids to propose a project about how to dispel stereotypes and change our view of aging.
Right. I love that, because it's a language that, not to generalize, but I think it's a language that they understand a lot, that social movement and media and how to use media. Yeah, no, well, I mean, to teach them how to use it critically and to use it for a purpose is, it's
I hope so. I hope so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's, I'm so excited to hear the progress that you've made so far in this project. It's only been about a year, I think, since you've started.
Yeah, just over a year, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how far you've come, and to see how far you've yet to go is really exciting. And I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to share it with us.
Well, thank you very much. I love this. This is a great series.
I really appreciate you taking the time to share your project with us. I think it's something that everybody should be following along, and we'll definitely be linking to the project and to your blog in the bio so people can follow you. And